the most powerful things is being able to name where you are. I did not
Yeah.
take any offense from you reaching out. I mean, how would you have known, first of all? But then number two, just having a candid check of like, this is where I am and this is what's real. The more real we are, the closer we get to help.
Yeah. 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 And I think within entrepreneurial sort of culture and the entrepreneurial environment, it's very much like, I'm okay. It's hustle, hustle, hustle. It's working ridiculous hours. It's, not necessarily looking after number one, not putting yourself first, not putting your oxygen mask on first. And that is like the ecosystem that we are sort of in. And we just wanted to sort of uncover what's the true story, especially for female entrepreneurs. Because we know like the funding disparity gaps, we know that narrative, only 1.8% of equity funding in the UK goes to all female founded teams, probably similar in the US. I haven't done the research on that. Yeah. And yet we also know that women are more investable, they add more value if they were given the same opportunities as men.
Okay, let's just lay out some things about this woman. We're talking to somebody who is deeply trained in the science of happiness. And I mean, she went to the source of where this is from, University of Pennsylvania, and got advanced degrees and all kinds of like smartness about this. But she also marries that with this deep entrepreneurial experience, beginning in tech, working with big companies as an executive at places like Apple, and thinking about like, okay, now I'm a mom. What does all of this mean? And how do I make it real and beautiful, not just for myself, but for all the women that I see standing next to me? Yvonne Biggins, it is such a pleasure to be sitting here and talking to you. And I want to begin our conversation at the very beginning. Obviously, we're going to go to the beginning. Tell me about the bug for entrepreneurship. Where did that start? Was it a specific moment? Was it something catalytic that happened? Where did entrepreneurship start for you?
Well, first of all, it's just a pleasure to be in your company, and that is the best introduction I think I've ever had. So thank you.
You're listening to Madam Speaker Says, your no fluff cheat code to becoming the voice everyone listens to. I'm your host, Machokhodi. If you've been waiting for a permission slip to straighten your crown and take up space like you invented the blueprint, Madam Speaker Says got you covered. No whispers, no apologies, just you, me, and some bold ass moves. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone to Madam Speaker Says. I'm so excited to have you on. As always, I'm always excited to see you here. Today, we are diving into thought leadership, and we're talking specifically about the cost of what it means to be the boss, okay? When Beyonce was singing that, I don't know that she was specifically talking about the psychological costs, the entrepreneurial costs, the double shift costs of being sandwiched in the middle between childcare and also taking care of elderly parents as we age, but also still being the boss, right? Mama Tina looks amazing. I hope all of our parents age as beautifully and gracefully. But let me tell you something, okay? When life gets real, it gets super deep and real. And our guest today, oh my goodness. Okay, let's just lay out some things about this woman. We're talking to somebody who is deeply trained in the science of happiness. And I mean, she went to the source of where this is from, University of Pennsylvania, and got advanced degrees and all kinds of like smartness about this. But she also marries that with this deep entrepreneurial experience, beginning in tech, working with big companies as an executive at places like Apple, and thinking about like, okay, now I'm a mom. What does all of this mean? And how do I make it real and beautiful, not just for myself, but for all the women that I see standing next to me? Yvonne Biggins, it is such a pleasure to be sitting here and talking to you. And I want to begin our conversation at the very beginning. Obviously, we're going to go to the beginning. Tell me about the bug for entrepreneurship. Where did that start? Was it a specific moment? Was it something catalytic that happened? Where did entrepreneurship start for you?
Well, first of all, it's just a pleasure to be in your company, and that is the best introduction I think I've ever had. So thank you. Also, I love your shirt.
Thank
Um,
you.
so I don't know where the bug came from, but I've always questioned things from a young age. So I remember when I was about seven, and we used to go to church, to a Catholic church, Irish parents, very Catholic. And I would see all of the altar boys going up and getting involved at mass, and I thought, why aren't there girls here? Like, why can't girls be altar servers too? And so I spoke to our priest about it, who spoke to the bishop, and we got it changed.
You
I
became
had
an
seen it.
altar girl?
I did. I did, and I was also a Eucharistic minister. Would you believe?
What?
Yeah, at about 16,
Okay,
my mum kind of encouraged me. Yeah.
I nominate you for Pope.
You know, I'd love to just be involved in the whole voting. So yeah, I'll take that nomination. But yeah, I don't know. My dad's an entrepreneur. Um, in fact, if I look at all my siblings, they're pretty much all entrepreneurs. Um, you know, Kieran is a social entrepreneur, my brother, who we met in
Yes.
Italy. My older brother's an entrepreneur, younger brother is pretty much taking over my dad's business. And my sister's quite entrepreneurial. She was a coach. So I think there's just something in our DNA. And I have thought about it because I've worked for big companies as well. And whenever I've worked for big companies, I just haven't been able to stay in my lane. I just find things too interesting, even as a teacher. So that I was a teacher, that was my first career out of university. I was making a promotional video about the school. I was doing all sorts. I was teaching, but I was doing loads of other stuff as well. And I felt so confined and institutionalized. You know, the bells used to really get to me. I don't really like to be confined. Um, so I think it's just a natural kind of trait that's kind of within me that I've probably learned, and probably part of it is just nature.
Let me ask you something, because that's a very interesting point, right? The confluence between nature and nurture of entrepreneurship. And especially when you're somebody for whom this comes naturally, I'm curious, what do you see, especially as a former teacher? What are the parts that are teachable? Because you have to remember, a lot of folks are listening and maybe working at a 9 to 5, maybe really see themselves as, I think there's something more to me than this, right? This is not fully satisfying me, and I'm capable of more, but still working on that self-trust. When you hear somebody say, "Oh no, this is something I was born with," it can be intimidating, because then it means, well, maybe I just wasn't born with that gene. I should just stay in this job.
Yeah, but then I've also been in jobs, but I've also left jobs without anything to go to, which I don't necessarily advise doing. But I think risk taking is kind of being a part of being an entrepreneur, is kind of having a bit of an appetite for risk. But I do think there are teachable elements as well. I mean, there's lots of courses in entrepreneurship. There is I don't know if you've come across in from MIT Sloan the disciplined entrepreneurship approach, which is very much about traditionally entrepreneurship not being very disciplined. You know, having an idea and kind of thinking, oh, I'll just take this to market. Whereas disciplined entrepreneurship outlines, I think it's like 24 steps of what you need to do to launch a business. And the first step and the most important step, once you've kind of found the founding team, is primary market research, is really, really, really understanding the pain points, the challenges of the segment that you want to serve, whatever that is, and not coming up with any kind of solution before you really, really, truly understand that problem. And they advocate spending so much time on that step, which is kind of step one. And then they outline all the other steps. So there's, an actual kind of approach that can be followed. So yeah, there's definitely, there's entrepreneurship kind of focused MBAs, entrepreneurship courses. So yeah, the skills can be taught. I also think a lot of it is about confidence. You said about inner self-belief. It's having the kind of confidence to just go and do it, which not everybody has. But that can come about through coaching, through working with mentors, having role models, which women don't have so much of as men.
Tell me which entrepreneurial experience feels like the one that formed you the most, right? So I love that we're giving people a little bit of a snapshot of how you became an entrepreneur already when you were teaching, you had an entrepreneurial spirit. And I actually think that's something to call out because sometimes we think of entrepreneurs as these lone riders who are wearing cowboy hats and they're out like somewhere, with like a lasso in hand and just making stuff happen all the time. Sure, that happens. Cowboy Carter is clearly something on my mind. The tour, classics tour. But a lot of entrepreneurship also happens within institutions and organizations, which is something that you just spoke about. So, number one, I appreciate you're giving us a little bit more if you want to color in that entrepreneurial track for you. What did it look like after you left teaching? And then tagged onto that a question about a particular entrepreneurial experience that feels like this was the one. This is when I knew, like, okay, I'm locked in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, there's a term entrepreneurship, which is
Yes.
kind of being an entrepreneur within an organization. And I definitely think I was that before I was an entrepreneur. So I gave you the example within teaching, and there were other things that I kind of took on lots of different projects within teaching. After teaching, I worked for quite a small organization that was very entrepreneurial. Its values were very entrepreneurial. So I learned a lot there, and I was able to build a team from scratch. So I started to realize that I like building. When things started to maybe not go so well for the company there, I kind of panicked and joined another company, which was my first stint at Apple, actually. And when I was at Apple, I went from being a manager to an individual contributor, and I was very much in a small lane. And looking back, I was probably quite not. Well, I wasn't depressed, but I wasn't happy there. It was, yeah, not sort of the best experience the first time at Apple. Probably because I was so constrained and couldn't be sort of creative. And I think maybe creativity is a key strength for me and value, and maybe for entrepreneurs in general. I haven't done the studies on that exactly, but yeah. Yeah, and then from Apple, I went and built again. It was almost like a startup within a bigger company, Smart, the company that made smart boards. I was the second employee in Europe, and we built the organization basically over 3 years. And that was like being an entrepreneur within a well-funded kind of organization. So it definitely kind of learned a lot there about building teams, about people, and I learned from some really good executives there as well. But that's about the time that I met you. Actually, I felt like learning is very important to me too. And I would imagine, I guess that many entrepreneurs like learning because you learn so much as an entrepreneur. It's definitely a top kind of strength for me. So I felt like I wasn't learning, didn't have a sense of purpose. And that's when we met at this Be the Change conference. And I was kind of dabbling around with a sort of coffee idea because I loved coffee, but I also liked the stories. And was thinking about how can you mix like coffee with stories from the growers and all of that sort of stuff. But somebody that I used to work with at Apple actually approached me to join him in setting up a startup, which was Movelis, which was a online community for teenagers who read, write, and share stories. So it was in a creative hub. And it was super interesting to me because it ticks so many boxes. I majored in English literature, so tick creativity, young people. That's who I taught. It was new. It was super exciting. It was with somebody that I respected, who I worked with at Apple. Some of the angel investors were well-known names. Everything about it was exciting. It meant a massive drop in salary. But I just, the money for me, I just knew that money for me wasn't a key driver. Things have changed a bit now because I need more financial stability with a child. But
We'll do that.
Yeah, at the time I was kind of, I'm really up for this. And that's I would say Novellis was my first real entrepreneurial kind of experience and grounding. And I used to say that I would skip into work. I just loved it. It didn't feel like work. I loved it so much. There was a joy about it. The people that I worked with, going out and meeting all the main VCs in London and sort of pitching the idea to them and getting feedback, seeing the community grow really rapidly, just learning so much. I was, learning on the job and given a lot of responsibility and making an impact. Like we had 16-year-olds that got one 16-year-old that got a publishing deal with Penguin, and then the rights of her book. It was a One Direction fan fiction where they changed the names of the characters. The rights got sold across the world. And kickstarted her writing career. So that was really meaningful to me to see that we could really have a lot of impact. And then lots of young people were just connecting around stories, around their passions, around creativity in a really healthy kind of way, which was really exciting. So that was my first kind of true venture, I think.
I love that. Thank you so much for bringing us on that journey, because there's things that you said that really stand out, and they stand out to me both in the topic where I want to shift our conversation to thought leadership and how you've become a thought leader, right? Through the platform of being an entrepreneur, and you talk about these particular values as being really pivotal to your entrepreneurship. And specifically, I'm thinking about creativity. I'm thinking about learning, and I'm thinking as well about making an impact and how huge. I mean, those are seismic. And there are also things that I'm excited to get into and unpack in the report that you have created, which is part of the thought leadership that we're about to talk about. But just for a heartbeat, tell me about becoming a thought leader, because this does feel, yes, it's very much in concert with being an entrepreneur, but to me, it feels as though it is an intentional and slightly different pathway, if you will, than just purely being an entrepreneur. And I think that this is really important to point out, because a lot of people are amazing entrepreneurs, but there's something sometimes untapped, which is I actually have ideas and intellectual property here that's not only worth monetizing, but this is a game changer for people like me if I put this intellectual property out, and it also just happens to elevate your career, right? So talk to me about what thought leadership means to you and how have you moved in that direction?
Okay, it's interesting. I don't think of myself as a thought leader. That's probably just a sort of trait as well. It's funny, I in a coaching conversation this week, I was speaking to somebody and reflected back to them that I saw them as a thought leader.
Can we pause on that? Because I think there is a there. Why not? Hey, pull up. Just you and me for a second. Are you an exec, a founder, or an entrepreneur who's sick of shrinking in rooms you're overqualified to lead? It's time to stop playing small and start owning your expertise. But how, Machochodi? Girl, I got you. I offer coaching that helps women of color just like you to claim your place as a thought leader. Whether you want to command a room, craft and share your signature story, or finally get that book out of your head and onto bookshelves, I've got the strategy and spicy accountability that you need. If you're tired of seeing less qualified folks shine while you stay behind the scenes, girl, the wait list is open. Follow the link in show notes to stop waiting for permission and claim your VIP spot now. My mission? Helping women just like you to snatch the spotlight, shake the table, and take your damn seat at the top already. No begging, no detours, and nope, no apologies. Just bold ass moves.
It's an interesting question. I guess when I think about thought leaders, I'm thinking about Martin Seligman or I don't know, Stephen Bartlett, or yeah, just people that are hugely expert and experienced
And
in their domain.
just for anybody who's listening, so some of the names that she's, like Martin Seligman, these are the founders of positive psychology, right?
Yeah.
And I want to push back against that and completely rebut it. That's just total nonsense trash. Let's just put it in the rubbish bin where it belongs. You are a thought leader, right? And I can qualify all the different ways that you are a thought leader. I'm not going to do that. But I think that there's something very interesting there about somebody like you who has just reeled off. I mean, it's not by mistake that I initially had you walk us through your entrepreneurial life and the maturity of your thinking, your intellectual development. The ideas that you're talking about aren't just coming out from nowhere, from the ether, right? They're grounded in lived experience as well as research. So if somebody like you cannot qualify themselves as a thought leader, Houston, we got a problem.
Yeah.
And I will
think
too, Yvonne,
yeah.
just to make a full circle on that particular conversation, then we can move on. I don't think it's unrelated from the research that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship around women and what some of the challenges that we face are. I've seen this in other places show up, so different industries, where as women, we have a hesitation towards just taking the thing, like, here's the baton. Okay, I own it as my baton. I have invented this thing. I'm a thought leader,
Yeah.
stake in the ground. And
Yeah.
I'm not that type of thought leader. No, you're not Martin Seligman, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I'm also conscious that I reeled off two male names. But again, that
I
kind
clocked
of
that.
is
I clocked that all day. Don't worry.
So let's say, where did my interest I guess my thought leadership is in the sort of well-being space. And where did my drive, and maybe entrepreneurship as well, but where did my drive come from? Or passion? And I would say it's from having a family that and an extended family that have been severely affected by mental illness, depression, anxiety. My only found out recently that my grandfather was actually institutionalized. This is going back a long time and would have been quite taboo. And my other grandfather had bipolar, and there is some kind of genetic kind of predisposition, as you know, I think, to mental ill health. So I think when I kind of realized there was a science behind well-being and flourishing, I really wanted to learn as much as I could about that, and apply it in different areas of my life that I care about, domains of life that I care about. So, my second venture after Marvelous was Young Happy Minds, which was teaching positive psychology and the science of happiness to young people in schools and teachers. And the thread of well-being has kind of actually been pretty deeply ingrained since being a teacher. I cared for the well-being of young people. I care about the well-being of entrepreneurs. I care about the well-being of female entrepreneurs. And I also have knowledge lived experience and also knowledge about how to support female entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs with the science of happiness. And so I guess that's where the driver comes from a very personal sort of experience of seeing family suffer, knowing that there are some solutions out there and wanting to take those and amplify them and spread them and enable people to sort of buffer against mental ill health developing, but also help people sort of flourish and become even happier. Does
Yeah.
that kind of make sense?
It absolutely does. And everything that you've shared resonates so deeply with me. I've been pretty public about my own challenges with mental health. And I also appreciate you bringing in a family lens. We are definitely mirrors looking at each other because that's something that echoes for me. And I want to name something because, especially for women of color, especially for people who come from countries beyond the West, it's not always common for us to name the things that have happened in our family within the lens of number one, just mental health, right? Like looking at it through a lens of mental health. It's like, no, that's just my uncle. He just loves every Saturday, like he hits the bottle. No, there's probably something a little bit deeper going on there, right?
Mm.
Then also applying the lens of science. And I'm not going to go into the racialized reasons why we're skeptical about that often when it comes to medicating Black people. But I do want to point out that what you're talking about is seismic, that it's not just me, it's thinking of me in relationship to this huge tree plant, like ancestors who've come before me, right? And what is it that is mine to break and what is it that is before? Let's dive a little bit deeper into this work because this really is the heart of this amazing report and research work that you and your partner Nani have completed. And first of all, I just want to ground people in how much of a big deal we're talking about here. We're talking about serving 250 women, female founders across the United Kingdom predominantly, but also across the world, and getting really deep into the psychology of what does it mean to be a female entrepreneur? What are the contradictions that we live with constantly? I found that that for me was like ding, 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 ding. Oh my God, like
Mm.
just constant back and forth, right? Constantly, it feels like every day is a day of whiplash. And I also want to bring listeners into the moment when you called me last year and you asked me, hey, how's it been? Mahohodi, would you like to have a conversation about entrepreneurship? And I was like, click.
Mm.
I am not having this conversation. I have been very public. Last year was harder for me than 2020. And so much of that has to do with the care work that you discuss in the report. I became a mom not that long ago, toddler mom now. And last year was when the shit really hit the fan. Okay. It really felt to me like, oh, now I get it. Like, this is hard as F. Like, it's just so walk us through, walk us through the meaning of what this project is and what you've heard from other women that can help anybody who is listening might find themselves in the same place.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, I'm sorry that you went through that. And I'm also, um, it was great that you were able to tell me as well. And I felt really bad about reaching out when you were in such a bad, you're having such a bad time. But I'm so glad that you're out, the other end of it, and feeling
Oh,
better now.
I think, and this goes into the research. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful things is being able to name where you are. I did not
Yeah.
take any offense from you reaching out. I mean, how would you have known, first of all? But then number two, just having a candid check of like, this is where I am and this is what's real. The more real we are, the closer we get to help.
Yeah. 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 And I think within entrepreneurial sort of culture and the entrepreneurial environment, it's very much like, I'm okay. It's hustle, hustle, hustle. It's working ridiculous hours. It's, not necessarily looking after number one, not putting yourself first, not putting your oxygen mask on first. And that is like the ecosystem that we are sort of in. And we just wanted to sort of uncover what's the true story, especially for female entrepreneurs. Because we know like the funding disparity gaps, we know that narrative. Only 1.8% of equity funding in the UK goes to all female founded teams, probably similar in the US. I haven't done the research on that. Yeah. And yet we also know that women are more investable, they add more value if they were given the same opportunities as men. I've got a stat here. Female businesses provide a 35% higher return on investment than male businesses. So we know that, but what's not often talked about is the emotional and psychological cost of being a female entrepreneur. And so, Noni and I actually started out, we didn't start out, we didn't go out to sort of write a report. That wasn't our aim. We were doing some primary market research, as the disciplined entrepreneurship approach tells you to do, or any good entrepreneur. I'm not saying it's not good
100%.
if you don't do this, but really
100%.
understanding we had our own biases. We're female founders ourselves,
Yes.
and our own understanding of female entrepreneurship, but we really wanted to understand the challenges further. So we interviewed I think about 35 female entrepreneurs. What we found out from those interviews was fascinating and shocking, and we then thought, let's do a survey. So we then surveyed, I think 215 female entrepreneurs responded. And then from that, we analysed all the data, worked with some really clever data analysts, and what we found was just fascinating. So one of the things that you mentioned was I think the female entrepreneurial paradox, which is that I'm just looking at the stats. So 83% of female entrepreneurs said they experienced high stress. 54% experience burnout. So, over half of female entrepreneurs are experiencing burnout. And yet almost 100%, it was 97% of female entrepreneurs said that they enjoyed the journey. And 66% had high
burning out. I love burning
out. 66% said they had high life satisfaction, which is like a common measure for well-being, commonly used measure. So yeah, it's a big paradox. And the thing is, it is highly stressful. And when the ecosystem kind of works a little bit against you with all those funding disparity issues, you can understand why. But at the same time, women also love, especially mothers, I think, the freedom, the flexibility, the autonomy. And that's what they love about it, and they couldn't imagine doing anything else. And it does mirror sort of wider research around entrepreneurship, that on the one hand, it enhances well-being because of the meaning and purpose and flexibility and autonomy. But it is one of the most, if not the most, stressful profession, which diminishes well-being as well. So that paradox is not just unique to females, but the stats are unique to our report and the females that we spoke to.
I mean, that's staggering.
Mm.
And, here's the thing, and this goes back to our conversation earlier, right? About where I was personally last year. It is one thing to read the statistics and to experience them as research that's out there, but to live it is a completely different thing. And I'm curious if you can speak to that yourself, what your experience has been, or the experience of other women who you spoke to. And I'm also curious, what does it mean when we begin sharing more of that information?
It definitely reflects my experience. I probably have experienced burnout twice in my life. Once was as a teacher, actually, which is why I left teaching. But the other time was in my second startup. It was, yeah, working ridiculous hours, not really getting much income in. It was a social venture, which has added pressure because there's so much at stake personally if it's mission driven. I didn't have a child at the time, but it was still extremely stressful, but I also loved it. You know, there's so many the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. It is a roller coaster and it's like an extreme sport. And I don't think I was necessarily equipped with the tools previously that I am now to be resilient to those challenges and those stresses. And some of the women that we spoke to, I mean, since we've released the reports, the comments that we've had is just people are just like, wow, this is amazing. It's like you guys had CCTV on inside my head. And female entrepreneurs are feeling validated. Because sometimes it's good to know you're not alone, isn't it? Like one of the things that the report also brings up is the loneliness factor.
Yes.
And that 66% of female entrepreneurs felt lonely. And that has direct impacts on levels of performance, stress levels, etc. And there was, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the loneliness. Women are less likely to have kind of female role models or less likely to seek out support because they can just do it all. They've had this like, I can do it, you know, I can handle this in other areas of their life. They usually kind of take on the house kind of admin, the family admin, the domestic sort of admin or chores. I think it's 75% of the domestic kind of chores tend to sort of lie with women, is what some of the research says. So yeah, we carry a lot. It's really, really hard. What we're kind of, I think your last question was about how we can sort of, what was the last part of the question? Was it about how we can support?
We're gonna get to how we're gonna support
Yeah.
and the tools, but just for again a heartbeat, I want to I want to just throw out some of the symptoms of what women are experiencing when they're in this place, in case you're listening and this is you, right? You talk about real things and listen, you talk about real things that people are going through, like sleeplessness, like not exercising, not taking care of yourself very well, not eating particularly well. And maybe you can elaborate on that. But I think it's so important for us to call that out because sometimes we don't make a connection between the symptoms that we're living through and something that is a much wider systems issue. It's not you. You are not the problem. You're working inside of something that is not built to sustain you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So the sort of like key barriers to successful women were overwhelm, exhaustion, so really not sleeping, procrastination, and sort of time management, like just not being able to do all the things. And the key sources of stress were operational overload, too much to do, too little time. And then financial anxiety, cash flow issues, and then raising funds and juggling. And I viscerally felt this I have to be honest, in the launch of this report, that last week I just was in a very bad place because I wasn't sleeping. I was getting up ridiculous o'clock. I was going to bed ridiculous o'clock. I was doing the majority of the childcare. I was having to do too many things that I didn't have time to do. We were, reaching out to press. We were reaching out to just we had issues with MailerLite, boring stuff, but stuff that's just, you as an entrepreneur, there's no one else that can fix it. You have to do it. So the buck lands, rests with you. And so I felt it, and I actually stopped myself last week and I made myself go for a walk in nature because I know that's one of the things that thriving entrepreneurs, we found out from our research, do to feel better. And once I started to sleep a bit more, my negative thinking, I noticed, became less. And I was able to catch that negative thinking and know that I was sort of spiraling. And I was also able to speak to someone about it as well, a supervisor. But You mentioned sleep. 59% of people said that they experienced sleeplessness since being an entrepreneur. And then we could see how that affected performance negatively. Loneliness scores went up, stress levels went up. Just have some water.
Please, please have the
Sleep.
water because that's part
Yeah.
of wellness.
I know. Sleep is a really big one. I mean, I think there's different sort of drivers for different people, but we all know the impacts of not having enough sleep. You know, as mums as well. I had a terrible time with my daughter in the beginning.
You know, if you're listening to this and you can't see it, I'm nodding so vigorously because the sleep deprivation that comes with being a mom, and especially obviously, you know, when we're dealing with a newborn, when we're talking about a newborn,
Mm.
there is a reason. Any mother can tell you there is a reason why sleep is used to torture human beings. And
I was just about to say that.
we literally do that as though it's nothing. Please continue.
Mm. No, and I kind of went through a period of, I would say, postpartum depression related to lack of sleep. And then did work with a sleep coach when my daughter was 6 months, and eventually it got better. But it was the same negative spiral that I was going into. I can sense that Um, yeah. So sleep is a really big one. And
Yvonne,
yeah, if you
so what I'm loving about where you're going with the conversation is exactly what I wanted to ask you. You talk about last week and how you saw yourself, you're beginning to spiral. And for somebody who is listening and understands or recognizes some of the symptoms that you've thrown out, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed myself. I'm juggling too much. I have no sleep. One of the things that I find really fascinating is how quickly you are asked, especially mothers, but then when you're an entrepreneurial mom, CEO mom, this is just almost expected as part of your job description. Give yourself up first. No healthcare for
yeah,
you. No, and I don't mean healthcare as in the institutional thing. I'm talking about healthcare as in thinking of yourself as the
yeah.
business priority number one. So talk to me not only about what you started to do beyond taking a wellness walk last week, right? But also deep things that you have found in the research that validate what the toolkit looks like, what women have just figured out on their own, right? As
Mhm.
these are the things that are tried and true, they work.
Yeah, yeah. So we did come up with a sort of best practice blueprint, and within that blueprint, it's based on the entrepreneurs that still they go through all the challenges that the other entrepreneurs go through, but they're still thriving. And we could see that they were thriving because they made time for joy. They prioritized fun in their lives. And people that are kind of in the positive psychology world and others will know just from sort of experience. But when we are having fun, when we're laughing, when we're experiencing positive emotions, we're more likely to have more creative ideas. We're more likely to feel better. Our peripheral vision widens. When we're feeling negative emotions, we become very narrow-minded, narrow thinking. And so fun, it's the thing that when I'm coaching people as well, it's the thing that, oh, I don't have time for fun. Um, but it's so important because it really does impact our well-being. So that's what some of the thriving entrepreneurs were doing. They were prioritizing fun in their lives and they weren't feeling guilty about it. I think as entrepreneurs and mums, we can feel guilty about going and having some fun. But it's so important.
Can you give some wildcard examples of what fun might have surprised you from these women, or just recurring themes of this is what I do to take care of myself? This is what fun sounds like. Or what do you do yourself for fun?
Yeah, I will go and just have a nice time with my girlfriends. Like we met on Saturday night, and I was just laughing so much at people that I've known for a long time, and just sharing our trials and tribulations of life. Being told that I was because I did a video to launch this to kind of promote this report, being told that I had my kind of phone voice on, just gentle sort of
Yes.
jesting with each other. Um, The other thing I do is I combine fun with exercise. For me, exercise is fun. And I was telling you earlier about paddle, which is a new kind of obsession of mine. I play tennis and I play paddle, but paddle I actually find more fun. It's very social. It's always played in doubles. There's always four people on a court. It's quite close quarters, so there's a lot of banter going on. It's really quite tactical. It's an impulse control game, I would say, because you can't really hit it too far or too hard. You have to be quite precise. If it hits the glass, which is the wall, then is out. So I combine exercise with fun, and that was another sort of practice that thriving entrepreneurs were doing was exercising. So there's another stat that I've got here about exercise. 46% of people did less exercise since becoming an entrepreneur. And that negatively, again, impacted performance, negatively impacted stress, loneliness, all of the sort of measures. Everything went down because they exercised less. So the entrepreneurs that were doing really well, they prioritized exercise. And whatever that, it doesn't have to be like going to the gym or playing paddle necessarily. I just like that. It could just be 10 minutes of movement a day, or getting outside and going for a walk. And actually, John Ratey, who was one of my lecturers at UPenn, says that exercise in nature is like exercise squared. And I think you're a runner. Are you a runner?
I am a runner. I love to run.
Yeah. So that is just, brilliant. If you can exercise outdoors,
Yes.
it has a
And
huge impact.
when you talk about exercise, one of the things I just want to amplify for the moms, CEO moms, we see you because we know exactly what it is, especially when you're first adjusting and then getting used to being adjusted, to let that go as the first thing that like it just takes too much time. It just takes too much effort. I'm tired. Those are legitimate reasons, right? But what you're
Yeah.
saying, which is such a powerful invitation, is it doesn't have to be this huge thing that we drum it up in our head. Where's the fun? What's the thing that you would be excited to go and do, as opposed to what is the thing that is the dredge to lose weight
Yeah.
or to do these things that are very different from long-term consistent exercise, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And if you can combine the two, some people love to go and do five rhythms dancing, or, go and
Yes,
dance. And that's a form of
yes,
exercise. It's also fun. If you do it together,
yes.
there's research to show you're more likely to see higher impact in your well-being as well
Yeah.
by having fun and exercising together. It's social.
But the social component is so big. I loved, loved, loved. And also, I mean, I'm African. I grew up in a place that thinks about how we be as community. I am because
Mm.
are not just me hanging out on my own. The community component that the research bears out. Please just go for it, go off on that, because I feel like I definitely, I don't just feel, I have lived this, I have seen it, the experience of being an entrepreneur. So often, even the ones that we shine a light on, that this is true for thought leadership too, right? The people that we look up to, we often imagine them as working in silos and as being these one-off superstars just trailing off into the galaxies, when really there's a team that's powering
Yeah.
them, when really
Yeah.
they are part of something that's much bigger. Talk about that, please.
Yeah. So, entrepreneurs with high openness scores tend to
What is
seek
open?
support.
What is an
So
open?
they're open to to talking. They're generally kind of more open to ask for help. So those entrepreneurs who sought out support saw much higher impact on their well-being. So that is another thing, like from the six practices, that's the third practice. So we've said joy, exercise, seeking support. And they did that in multiple different ways. So the first type of support was working with a coach. So 88% of entrepreneurs who worked with a coach saw a higher impact on their well-being, which is,
88%.
yeah, yeah. And it's not because Noni and I are both coaches, but that is what came
I
out
would
of the
say
research.
I'm pausing the podcast because everybody here knows I am a coach,
Yeah.
and here's a coach that I've invited, but this is also someone who's done research. 88%.
Hmm.
You can't
Yeah.
ignore.
You can't ignore it, no. And I mean, you probably see it with your clients, and I see it all the time as well. And I have coaching myself and supervision. And I mean, I know that that got me through last week. The supervision session, I was in a really bad way, and it really got me through the week. So yes, I can see very much firsthand how coaching um, helps. Um, Let me just see the other stats for you. So, oh, peer support. So, founders who were part of a WhatsApp group with other founders, or an organization of founders, like a community of founders, they also had a 85% impact, a positive impact on their well-being, as opposed to entrepreneurs who didn't seek support in that way. Um, Mentors, so being able to speak to an advisor or a mentor, meant that it wasn't, we didn't measure the impact on well-being, but they had a more positive view of entrepreneurship. It was like an 83% said that they had a more positive view on entrepreneurship from talking to a mentor or an advisor. And then the fourth source of support was friends and family. But there's a slight caveat with that one because, as you probably know, and I know, like, friends and family can be very well-meaning, and sometimes it's nice to offload to them, but they don't, if they're not an entrepreneur, they don't often understand what you're going through. And also sometimes it's just too close, and
Yes.
you don't want to kind of talk about all the problems and issues, and also you don't want to sort of like bring sort of problems necessarily into um a sort of space where you're chatting with your toddler about, I don't know, Paw Patrol, or yeah,
Right.
and your husband's or your partner's around. So those that used friends and some family, it wasn't the strongest support mechanism. They still had a 7 out of 10 loneliness score. So that's quite interesting. So yeah, seeking support was big, from a coach, advisor, and being part of peer support groups. And friends and family is okay, but not as strong. Um, I would still say speak to somebody as opposed to not speaking to someone. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I thought that last bit of, information in the research was so fascinating and definitely validated my personal life experience. Family, friends, they're so supportive, but they're not in the ring the same way with you. And
yeah,
also, when you move on to the next round of the fight, they might not necessarily be seeing that next round of the fight. So they're still back there where you left them, and they're tortured by the thing that you told them about how hard last week and your launch was. And they don't understand, well, why would you keep doing this to yourself? What's wrong with you? You know?
yeah. And why are you okay now?
Yes, yes. Like I haven't been part of that ride. Listen, entrepreneurship is such a roller coaster, and the tools that you're giving us, I hope folks are writing this down because these are such a game changer. This is not PSA here, folks. This is not an ad to ask you to work with either Yvonne, myself, and Yvonne and Nani. If that's something that resonates with you, fantastic. But this is, I can tell you for myself, for having been an entrepreneur for more than 10 years and having gone through burnouts that were just epic, I do not want somebody else to go through that at all.
Mm,
And I find that in entrepreneurship, like you said at the top of this conversation, this is not the forefront of what we talk about, right? We do not
no.
lead with, yeah, sure, my numbers might look fine right now, but can I please tell you about the panic attack that I had in the bathroom before I got to this networking event, or actually that I'm having right now as I am talking
Mm,
to you? And I'm overcompensating by telling you about all these amazing things that are happening because I am so underwater and I don't even know what to say right now.
mm,
Not the conversation that you're having at most cocktail mixes, right? And
yeah,
for me, the thing that I think is groundbreaking about this research is it begins to open that conversation. Sure, these are often conversations that we're having, like you said, in the private group chat, but
yeah,
we have those conversations at the cocktail party in real time too.
yeah, exactly. And really, the reports are call to arms in terms of like the wider ecosystem. In terms of like, we really we really want accelerators, VCs, anyone within the wider ecosystem to stand up and take notice and encourage founders to have that type of conversation and enable a safe space for them to be able to do that. But we need to work with VCs and accelerators and others within the ecosystem to tool them up almost to be able to have those conversations. So they need coaching and support also, because it's not really their kind of way of operating. Yeah. And I was when you were talking about the sort of having a panic attack before going to sort of present something or go to a cocktail party. I was thinking about an entrepreneur that I worked with a couple of years ago, who was having severe mental health issues, but felt like he couldn't tell the company that invested in them because he didn't want to lose the investment or appear to be weak. And it's just in this day and age, it's just like that is still very prevalent. That it is seen as a weakness, or there's a perception that if you are not sort of functioning optimally, that you're not investable, or it's not it's awful, really.
I think there's something very interesting here, and it's two things can be true at the same time, right? The amount of courage it takes for somebody to speak out and to seek help. You and I know it personally. We've seen it in people that we love, that is maybe one of the bravest things a human being gets to do, right? At the same time, we live in this world where you are very far from crazy for imagining your partners at the VC will in a heartbeat fold their investment, take the rug under you, and poof, there you are. Like, you don't have what you worked so hard for, right? So you're not, I think it's important to call out to people like, you're not crazy for believing the things that you do, because that's the world that we live in. And at the same time, you do need to be brave enough to save yourself. So the thing that I think I want to ask you especially about is, how do we become more strategic, especially as female founders, right? Because it's not always safe in some instances to raise your hand, especially to a VC, and say, hey, that product that I was working on last week, do you know what it did to my mental health? Like, I'm not sure I can do it the same way next time. How do we navigate with some strategy?
It's a good question, because we are fighting a system that is working against us. But as you asked me that question, I kind of thought we find camaraderie and support with others. So it's some of those things that are in the best practice blueprint. We speak to others about how we're feeling, and we seek out that support, and we make sure that we have support structures in place, people to sound out ideas with, so that we don't necessarily say the wrong thing to a VC.
But that is strategy, right? So baking into your business plan. Actually, I mean, one of the things that I loved in the report was where you talk about, was it nature and resilience and grit as part of business strategy? These aren't like cute, nice things on Saturdays. No, this is the 9 to 5 part, or given the hours that you work, this is the meat that like should be going until whenever you clock off.
Yeah, I mean, there's this sort of soft skills, hard skills, vernacular still, and being resilient is probably seen as soft skill. But if you're not resilient, then you won't survive in this really difficult ecosystem. And it's not you. You're not the problem. The system is. I think that's what, but we can support you to still survive and thrive within that ecosystem that's really, really challenging. And the fact that we're just having these conversations, I think the fact that we've produced this report, we've got some press coverage around it as well. People are talking about it. The more that we can sort of amplify the messages within it, the more that it will start to be kind of accepted. I think that these things are really, really important, that we point out. about how to survive and thrive as a not just a female entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur in general, because men they don't have maybe as pressing kind of disparities in terms of financial funding, but they still suffer
Yes.
a lot as well, and often are unable to talk to anyone about it. So this is for everyone. So I was just going to sort of point, you mentioned nature. So getting out into nature is another key practice that thriving entrepreneurs did. I think there's research to show that just 20 minutes a day in nature has huge impacts on our well-being. Hugging a tree can have
You're going a step too far for me.
but or combining it with something that you already do, habit stacking, is similar to habit stacking. But when I take my daughter to nursery, it's a sort of 10-minute walk there and back, so it's a 20-minute walk, and just appreciating birdsong and pointing out birds to her and pointing out nature, and that has an impact on my well-being. And also I always have like creative thoughts after that walk. So not only is it sort of good for our well-being, but it also helps us to be more creative, which we need to be as entrepreneurs as well. Um, Also, managing negative thinking was something that these entrepreneurs do. And I think that's really important because we have this inbuilt negativity bias. We let kind of positive things just slip like Teflon, and we let negative thoughts and experiences stick like Velcro. That's not my analogy. It's Dr. Rick Hansen, but it's so true.
Yes.
And as entrepreneurs, we have so many wins. And often we just kind of, I'm guilty of doing it myself. We're featured in Forbes Entrepreneur Startups magazine, but I've let it just kind of, when people say things to me, oh yeah, but it's just a bit of press. But then the awful things, well, the bad things that I'm saying awful, just kind of stick to us, and then that's when we start to spiral. So entrepreneurs that are able to catch that thought in the moment and start to sort of challenge it or reframe it or work with a coach to kind of unpack it, they're the entrepreneurs that are also doing really well and thriving. So managing negative thinking is really important. And then the last one was,
I mean, what you're talking about there is mindfulness, which is so deeply related to spirituality.
Yeah, and that was another practice actually that thriving entrepreneurs do, is practice mindfulness and spirituality. And there's so much evidence about the positive impact of mindfulness on our mental health, on our cognition, attention, focus, depression, anxiety levels. So it's something for me that sort of slipped a little bit because I think you can only do so much. And I prioritize exercise because I just love the feeling that it gives me. And I feel so much better from it. It is like a medicine for me. But I do some journaling, which is a form of mindfulness, every morning and evening. And that just helps to top and tail my day and help me kind of like focus on gratitude and, what's gone well. And then helps me kind of like focus for the day, like what's the one thing I'm really appreciating in my life, and what am I going to focus, what's the one thing I have to do today as well. So I think with all of this, there is a sort of person activity fit framework. Like, some things work for some people, some things work for others. So it's like, choose what works for you and don't feel like this is another load of things that you have to do.
Or that you have to do all of them. I mean, what you just, I focused on exercise because that was what's most resonant right now. If mindfulness or, connecting with your spiritual community feels like the thing that can support you the best right now, please have at it. Like, show up to church every Sunday or go to the mosque all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then with that, you've got the community. There's no kind of surprise that, religion and has been kind of as popular, I guess, over the years, because it brings community together. There's that support structure. And whatever your religion is, it doesn't have to be sort of like a known religion, but your community, I think it's, if you can find your community and really kind of to find your support in that community, it's it's very beneficial.
Yvonne, I want to ask you a question about courage, because I believe so much of this conversation, what we've been circling, is a question of courage, right? The courage to say, actually, I can't stay here as a teacher. It's burning me as much as I care about these students. The courage as a mom to focus on yourself and to say, in order to be a really good parent, I need to uproot my entire family. That was my decision last year, and move us to a place that, like, we'll just see how well it works. And now we're thriving. The courage to call yourself a thought leader, right? When that might not necessarily be the identity you first grappled towards, or not the identity that has been shown as this is what people like you are. What is courage, and how does courage manifest in your life?
Oh, that's such a good question. It's a very Mahadi question. Okay. I think courage for me is linked to truth. So it's like, if I know something as much as I can know to be true, um, I want to kind of speak that truth, and I want others to kind of hear about it and know about it. And I guess, yeah, feel better in knowing about it. So I think, everything that I've done has been, from a sort of courage perspective, has been about truth telling and spreading truth, if that makes any sense.
That resonates so deeply, so profoundly. And also, I want to call this out. The work of speaking the truth. Is there anything that is more thought leadership than that? Especially when the truth that you're speaking is difficult, right? You and I have known each other long before you had this report, long before the consultancy and this iteration of entrepreneurship. And one thing I can stand on is this is a woman who has been brave enough to talk about mental health when it was not sexy, when it was not something people wanted to talk about, when it was not something people even wanted to offer resources towards certain communities for, right? And that, my friend, is what a thought leader does. They find the stake in the ground of the difficult thing that nobody wants to shine a light on. And they say, we're going to talk about it because it's important. Period.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you. Yes, and I feel like Noni and I, it was like we just had to share this with the world, and now it's about how do we use it collectively, all female entrepreneurs and allies to change things. Like, what can we do together now that we know this and it's being spoken about? We've known it all along, but now we have research and evidence, and what can we collectively do to change things?
Yeah, I am so excited because you're leading that conversation, and because one of the things that is brilliant about the report, it ends at this place of action. It is a call to action. It's an invitation to say, now that you know, what you gonna do? Because we can't be doing it the way that I've been doing it, right? And where you go with this, where you take that courage next, how you tell this truth, how you amplify it. And also this is the work of thought leaders. Thought leaders aren't just thinking about this privately for just journaling at the end of the evening. No, it is that, as well as how do I use this to build my community and to make things better for everybody else. And I can't think of anything that is more meaty, more substantive, and more necessary. So thank you. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for this work. And once you figured it out for all of us, it's happening in real time, but I have full confidence within our lifetime, we're going to get closer to figuring this thing out, right?
Yeah.
conversation on this podcast and beyond the podcast that's like, girl, we won. Clink, clink. And take it to the bank because we need that part too.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, honestly, connecting with you again and talking about this. And thank you for just being amazing.
Thank you, everybody who has been here with us. This is Madam Speaker Says, signing off. I am Makgokhodi, I'm your host, and we've been joined by the brilliant Yvonne Biggins. You can follow us in show notes for all of the yummy things that Yvonne Biggins offers, including where to access her report, including how to work with her. I know that they offer one-on-one coaching as well as group coaching for founders. And if you're a VC or you're somebody who is at an incubator, I want you to know that she got tools for you, okay? And they are bespoke tools. They're not just like, this fits everybody. So check all the details out in the show notes. If you're interested in learning about thought leadership, I'm your girl. All of my notes are in the show notes. Thank you again for joining us.